The turning of time from scarcity to abundance is not a change of circumstance, but a change of vision, where the heart awakens to see what has always been waiting. For so often we think of lack as if it were the sum of all our days, the tyrant that writes its decree over our mornings, and whispers its threats into our nights, and we learn to live beneath its shadow as though it were the very sky. We measure ourselves by what we do not have, what we cannot touch, what we imagine is withheld from us, and in doing so we forget that the universe was never stingy. The fields were always green beyond the fence we built in our minds. The streams were always flowing where we dared not walk, and the feast was always laid out, though we insisted on eating scraps. Scarcity then is less a fact of creation and more a blindness of perception, less a condition of earth and more a condition of the eyes that refuse to see. And when the day comes, as every soul must one day encounter, that the eyes are opened, the tyrant is revealed for what it is: an illusion, a fog, a veil drawn across the face of glory. What we call abundance is never really a storehouse suddenly filled or a bank suddenly multiplied. Abundance is the recognition that there was never emptiness to begin with. The stars did not appear in the sky because one man finally looked up. They had been there since the beginning, waiting for his gaze. The harvest does not spring into existence merely because the farmer walks into the field with faith. It had been sown, tended, and ripened by a hand greater than his, waiting for him to see what was already promised. Thus the turning of time from scarcity to abundance is nothing less than an awakening, the shift of a soul from sleep to sight, from shadow to light, from counting losses to perceiving treasures already laid before it. When the heart awakens, it does not conjure gold out of air, but rather it realizes that the ground it trades is already paved with riches too bright for the eyes that were shut in despair. Consider how a child looks at the world compared to the wary man. The child sees marvels in the ordinary: the leaf that spins as it falls, the stone that glimmers in the brook, the bread that tastes like a miracle because hunger sharpened delight. The wary man sees only commonness, only repetition, only insufficiency. Yet nothing has changed but the vision. The leaf has not grown dull, the stone has not lost its shimmer, the bread has not been stripped of flavor. The heart that awakens is like the child restored, able once again to marvel, to perceive abundance where once there was only lack. And herein lies the secret: that abundance is always waiting. But few ever awaken to it because they mistake the closed eyelids of their despair for the absence of light. If the seasons themselves teach us anything, it is this: winter is not the death of the earth, but the sleep before the bloom, and lack is not the death of a soul, but the slumber before its awakening. In the soil of absence, roots are deepened; in the hunger of longing, appetite is purified; in the darkness of want, sight is sharpened. We are trained by lack not to despise the day of scarcity, but to let it teach us how to hunger rightly, so that when the veil is lifted, when the heart awakens, we are not merely swept away by abundance, but able to hold it, to cherish it, to recognize that it was there all along. The man who wakes from hunger to find a feast set before him knows the value of bread in a way the one always surrounded by banquets never could. The woman who wakes from loneliness to discover she was never abandoned, but always accompanied, will treasure companionship more deeply than one who never walked a shadowed road. And so the turning of time from scarcity to abundance is not about the sudden acquisition of what was missing, but about the sudden revelation that nothing essential was ever missing. It is the eyes that open to see water where they thought only desert, the ears that suddenly catch the music where they once heard only silence, the heart that beats faster because it knows the cage was unlocked the whole time. When this awakening happens, the same world appears altogether different, as though dawn has broken not on the hills and rivers, but on the soul itself. The bread tastes sweeter, not because the recipe changed, but because gratitude returned. The air feels lighter, not because the wind shifted, but because the burden was removed from the mind. The laughter of friends sounds richer, not because their voices altered, but because the ear has learned once again to delight in them. Scarcity deceives us by telling us that our lives are measured by what we do not possess. It chains our gaze to the empty shelves and convinces us that they define the entire house. But abundance, once awakened to, reveals that the shelves were never the measure of the home, the warmth of its fire, the strength of its walls, the love that moves within its rooms. These are the treasures. The heart that awakens to abundance learns that wealth is not a matter of coin, but of vision. A man with gold who cannot see beauty is poorer than a beggar who marvels at a sunrise. A woman with jewels but no gratitude lives in lack, while another with nothing but hope lives in riches. Thus, the true transformation is not in the increase of possessions, but in the increase of sight. There is a mystery woven through all creation that reveals this truth. The bird does not hoard, yet it sings each morning as though the world were overflowing. The flower does not gather barns, yet it lifts its face to the sun as though it has been granted the kingdom entire. The river does not count its drops, yet it runs in joy as though it can never run dry. We are invited into the same song, the same lifting, the same running. But we forget, and in forgetting, we fall into the illusion of scarcity. When the heart awakens, it does not discover new creation, but remembers creation as it truly is, lavish, sufficient, brimming with life beyond measure. And here lies the wonder: abundance does not wait for tomorrow. It does not require the rearranging of all circumstances. It does not demand the erasure of history. It is present now, hidden under the veil of lack, waiting for the eyes of the heart to open. One day a man walks to his field and sees only barren ground. The next day he walks the same path and sees rows of possibility, seeds waiting to be tended, a harvest already promised though not yet visible. Nothing has changed in the field, yet everything has changed in him. That is the turning of time, not the ticking of clocks, but the awakening of vision. For when the heart is opened, the world itself seems to turn, as though all creation had been waiting for this single gaze to awaken. Every wilderness of lack is only a training ground, shaping the soul for the strength to hold plenty without losing gratitude. For it is one thing to dream of abundance and another to bear it well. Riches have ruined more than poverty ever could, for poverty teaches humility while riches tempt to pride. Scarcity humbles a man to know his dependence, but abundance can swell him into forgetting the very source that sustained him when he had nothing. Thus, in mercy, the wilderness is given. It is the schoolroom where the heart learns patience, the forge where endurance is hammered, the chamber where humility is sown, so that when abundance comes, and it surely does, the soul will not be drowned by its own prosperity. Lack is not a curse then, but a discipline, a training, a preparation for the weight of plenty. Consider the wanderings of a people in the desert, learning daily dependence on bread that fell like dew. They were not permitted to hoard, for hoarding would have taught them greed. They were not permitted to starve, for starvation would have taught them despair. Instead, they were fed just enough each morning to learn trust, and in that daily dependence their souls were shaped. So too does lack shape us, not to strip us of hope, but to form in us the strength to hold future blessings without shattering. For abundance is heavier than scarcity. It is easier to stumble beneath too much than too little, unless the heart has been trained to carry it with gratitude. We imagine sometimes that if we were only free from want, free from the struggle of scarcity, our joy would be unshakable. But is it not true that those with full tables are often the first to complain about flavor? Those with overflowing barns still lie awake worrying that tomorrow may rob them of increase. It is not plenty itself that brings joy, but the character formed to receive it. And character is carved not on the mountaintop of luxury, but in the valley of want. In lack we learn what matters, we discover what sustains, we are driven to the bedrock of truth because all else has been stripped away. Then, when abundance comes, we know that it is gift, not entitlement. We hold it with open hands, not clenched fists, because we remember when the hands were empty. The wilderness is not only training but also testing, though not in the sense of a cruel examination, rather in the sense of refining fire. Gold is tested in the flame not because it is despised, but because it is valued. The fire does not destroy the gold, it removes the dross, leaving the treasure pure. So it is with the wilderness of lack. The long nights of longing, the unanswered prayers, the empty cupboards, the weary heart. All these are fires that strip away false loves and surface idols. They test whether we will cling to bitterness or lean into hope, whether we will complain or cultivate gratitude, even in small mercies. Each time we choose trust in the wilderness, the soul grows more resilient, more prepared for the weight of abundance. For gratitude learned in scarcity is gratitude that will not be lost in plenty. It is easy to despise the days of little, to curse them as wasted years, to wish them erased. But those very years are the ones that shape the vessel for what is to come. Imagine a cup too shallow to hold the wine poured into it. Abundance would spill over and be wasted, because the vessel was never deepened by the chiseling of want. So the wilderness deepens us. It digs out the shallow places of our souls, expands the capacity of our hearts, stretches us beyond comfort, until we can hold more than we imagined possible. The man who has walked through lack and remained faithful is like a deep well when abundance fills him. It does not overflow in ruin but pours forth to refresh others. There is also a strange tenderness born of scarcity. The one who has known hunger knows the value of bread and will not waste it. The one who has known loneliness treasures companionship more fiercely. The one who has endured poverty shares generously when abundance comes, because memory has written compassion into the marrow. Lack is therefore a teacher not only of endurance but of empathy. It shapes the soul to see others still in the wilderness and to extend a hand, to remember the ache of want and therefore to steward abundance with mercy. Abundance in untrained hands breeds arrogance, but abundance in a heart shaped by scarcity breeds generosity. That is the strength to hold plenty without losing gratitude. Think of the farmer who waits through the long winter. His fields are bare, his barns nearly empty, yet he waits with faith that spring will come. Each frost-touched morning trains him in patience. Each lean meal teaches him endurance. Each seed hidden in the soil reminds him that unseen work is being done. When spring finally arrives, when the green shoots push through the dark soil, the farmer rejoices not only in the harvest, but in the long preparation that made the harvest possible. So too does the wilderness prepare us. Lack is not permanent, it is seasonal. But the lessons learned in that season endure into eternity. Patience, humility, gratitude, endurance. These are not wasted treasures, but everlasting ones. Many fear that lack defines them, that their years of scarcity mark them as failures, as lesser, as forgotten. But lack is not identity, it is instruction. It is not the final word, it is the shaping word. The child disciplined by a father is not unloved, but deeply loved, for the discipline is proof of belonging. So the wilderness of lack proves that we are not abandoned but prepared, not overlooked but refined. To live through lack is to be given the rare gift of becoming strong enough to carry abundance without collapsing beneath it. Imagine a soul given sudden abundance without the training of scarcity. It is like a child entrusted with a crown, unable to bear its weight, stumbling under the burden meant for a king. But imagine a soul forged in lack, tested in wilderness, trained in endurance. When abundance crowns such a soul, it does not stumble, it stands tall, steady, grateful, radiant. The crown does not crush, it rests with honor. That is the purpose of the wilderness, to form kings and queens, not beggars who fear losing their coins. And so, every wilderness of lack is not wasted ground. It is holy ground where character is formed. It is not an interruption in the story, but the chapter where the hero learns the strength that will be needed later. Without it, abundance would undo him. With it, abundance will only magnify his gratitude. The wilderness is not the end of the road, but the training before the promised land. It is not meant to destroy, but to prepare. And when abundance comes, as surely it does, the soul that has walked through lack will know how to hold it. Not with arrogance, but with awe. Not with entitlement, but with thanksgiving. Not with fear of losing, but with joy in giving. The great day of ending is also the great day of beginning, for when lack bows out, fullness does not merely arrive. It is revealed. Endings are often feared because they feel like loss, like the closing of a door never to be opened again, like the silence after a song. Yet every true ending is also a threshold, a passage, a birth disguised as death. The night does not end the day's story, but ushers in the dawn. The seed buried in the soil does not end its life, but begins its growth. So too with the end of lack, it is not a cruel dismissal, not a void left behind, but the unveiling of a new chapter that was always hidden within the old. The last day of scarcity is the first day of revelation, when what was concealed in shadow steps forth into light. To say that lack bows out is to recognize that it was never sovereign, only permitted for a season, a temporary teacher who now takes its leave. It was not the master of destiny, though it often masqueraded as one. It strutted across the stage of life as if eternal, convincing us that want was the final word. But now comes the moment when lack lays down its mask, bows low, and exits, because its part in the play is finished. And as it withdraws, fullness steps forward, not as a sudden intruder, but as the rightful heir returning to its throne. What once looked like deprivation was only the dim outline of abundance, waiting for the right hour to appear. The end of lack is therefore the revelation of what has always been, a fullness that was hidden behind veils, a banquet that was set but not yet uncovered. The mystery of beginnings wrapped in endings is written into the fabric of creation. The autumn leaf falls, and we call it death, but hidden in its fall is the seed of spring. The tide recedes, and we mourn its loss, but already the rhythm promises its return. The candle burns down, but its light has already kindled memory that will outlast the wax. What appears as ending is never only ending, it is the prelude to something greater. A shifting of seasons, the rolling back of a curtain. So it is with the last day of lack. It appears as though something has ceased, but in truth, something long awaited is unveiled. Think of the moment when winter finally loosens its grip. For months, the ground lay frozen, the branches bare, the air bitter. Many feared that life itself had perished, that spring was a forgotten dream. Yet all the while, unseen beneath the soil, roots were stretching. Seeds were preparing, and the first buds were gathering their strength. Then comes the day, not by accident, not by chance. When the frost surrenders, the first bloom opens, and what seemed dead bursts into color. The end of winter is not mere cessation, it is the grand beginning of spring. So too with the last day of lack, what feels like an ending is in fact the long, hidden spring breaking forth, the unseen growth now made visible. Lack trains the heart to long, but its bowing out allows longing to be fulfilled. Abundance is not created in that instant. It was always promised, but it could not be seen until lack had completed its work. There is a divine rhythm in this. The curtain of scarcity must fall so that the stage of fullness may rise. The soul must learn the silence of want so that it can truly hear the music of abundance. And when the music begins, when fullness is revealed, it is not the noise of sudden fortune, but the harmony of a long, awaited promise finally brought to light. We often think of beginnings as small, fragile, tentative. Yet the greatest beginnings are often disguised as endings, clothed in finality, crowned with closure. A child's first breath comes at the end of the womb. A graduate's new chapter begins at the closing of years of study. A bride and groom start their life together at the end of their single journeys. So it is with lack when it ends, it gives birth to abundance, not as something foreign, but as something that has been growing quietly all along. What feels like loss is in truth unveiling. The last page of one book is the first line of the next, written in the same ink by the same hand. The fullness revealed after lack is sweeter precisely because of what preceded it. If abundance were to appear without lack, it would be taken for granted, dismissed as ordinary, squandered as excess. But abundance revealed through the ending of lack is abundance treasured. It is bread that tastes like miracle, because hunger sharpened the palate. It is water that glitters like wine, because thirst carved out its value. It is companionship cherished as sacred because loneliness etched its absence into the soul. The ending of lack is thus the intensifier of fullness, the seasoning that makes abundance not merely present but precious. There is a paradox here. We despise lack while we endure it, yet when fullness comes, we discover that it was lack that made us capable of joy. Without its shadow, the light would have seemed pale. Without its silence, the music would have gone unnoticed. Without its emptiness, the fullness would have felt common. The great day of ending is therefore not only the bowing out of want but the crowning of meaning. Scarcity departs, but it leaves behind the treasure of perspective, the wealth of gratitude, the wisdom of endurance. And with those in hand, fullness shines all the brighter. Endings also carry a finality that frees us. So long as lack lingers, even faintly, we fear its return. We wonder if abundance is only a dream. We glance backward instead of forward. But when lack bows out decisively, when the curtain falls with clarity, fear itself is dismissed. The soul no longer trembles at shadows, no longer hoards against imagined famine, no longer doubts that abundance is real. The ending seals the beginning. It marks the transition not as temporary relief, but as permanent unveiling. Fullness is no longer a fragile hope. It is a present reality. And yet, fullness is not merely about having more. It is about being more. For the revelation of abundance is not the filling of barns, but the enlarging of hearts. It is the soul that has walked through lack, and has now been freed to see the beauty of what has always surrounded it. Fullness is discovered in the laughter of children, the warmth of friendship, the steady rising of the sun, the quiet gift of breath. It is not only the treasures we can touch, but the treasures that were invisible until lack unveiled them by contrast. The end of scarcity opens the eyes to see that abundance was woven into every fiber of existence, waiting to be recognized. This is why the great day of ending is also the great day of beginning, because it awakens the soul not only to receive but to perceive. Lack may depart, but its departure leaves behind sharpened vision, a capacity to see what was always present but overlooked. And in this awakening, life itself begins anew. Each morning becomes a gift, each word of kindness a jewel, each moment of stillness a sanctuary. Fullness does not merely fill the hands, it fills the eyes, the ears, the heart, until even the simplest things pulse with glory. So the last day of lack is not an empty goodbye, but a radiant unveiling. It is the turning of a page, the rolling back of a stone, the dawn breaking after the longest night. What once looked like the end is revealed as the beginning, and what once seemed absent is revealed as present all along. The great day of ending ushers in the great day of beginning, and the soul steps forward into abundance, not as a stranger in a foreign land, but as an heir returning home, recognizing at last the fullness that was always waiting,